Hello everyone and happy Friday. I'm Nitsa and I bring you a new MTG Top 10 each and every week. This week we're doing a Top 10 about Amonkhet Limited. On this list I'm going to talk about the 10 cards that I see people underrating the most in the format, especially in drafts. The rankings here are based on how late I see some of these cards in drafts when they really shouldn't be there. Now let's get started. At number 10 I have Magma Spray. People know Magma Spray is really good. I'm not saying that they don't, but I actually think it's even better than most people do. The fact of the matter is that aggro is a big deal in this format, and there are a lot of X2s in this format. Some of them also have Embalm, and Magma Spray is great against those decks. You can get 2-for-1s when they use combat tricks or cartouches. For one single mana, it can end up being a huge bomb. I think it's a first pickable common. I think it's better than all the other red commons, including Electrify. I think it's one of the best commons, period, and perhaps is the best common in the set. And again, people realize this one's good. That's sort of why it's at number 10. But I'm just saying it's even better than what I see it going as, because I pick 6 or 7 on a relatively decent basis, and that really shouldn't be happening. Magma Spray is an amazing card in this format. There's just lots of small creatures, lots of aggressive decks. And if you're an aggressive deck, also, you want Magma Spray to kill your opponent's blockers. So it's good in both aggressive and non-aggressive decks. So Magma Spray, an underrated card. Take it even earlier than you already are. At number 9, I have sort of a 2-for-1. I have River Serpent and Desert Celadon. These are both cards that I underrated in my own full set review, which I've discussed on another video on my channel. I sort of underrated how good having the option to cycle is. I sort of looked at these guys as overcosted, big, dumb creatures, and that is what they are. But the fact that they also have cycling is very important. In the early game, they help you dig through your deck. In the late game, you can play them as big creatures. And River Serpent's going to be a 5/5 who can attack more often than not because you throw cards in your graveyard a lot in this format, whether through cycling or other means. And I actually like the Celadon a little bit more than I do the River Serpent. I think it's a better deal for the mana. Obviously, it can always attack, and obviously it has one more power. It does die to Electrify, though, but they're both good. They're not incredible, but I see these going like second and third to last, and they really shouldn't be there. Any red deck and any blue deck should be happy to play these, except maybe the most aggressive decks that don't want to spend any time cycling at all. Number 8, we have sort of another dumb creature, Dune Beetle. Just a 2-mana 1/4, right? Right. But people, I think, are underrating Dune Beetle, too. I picked them up last pick on a regular basis, but Dune Beetle actually has a lot of utility. Again, aggressive decks are a problem in this format, and Dune Beetle can block a lot of those X1s, even 2 and 3 power creatures. Yes, it can't block an exerted creature super well, but it can block a lot of the creatures who can't exert. It's also very, very good in the black-green -1/-1 counter deck, where it provides a good body for you early, and in the late game, it provides a place to put all your -1/-1 counters when you're playing your big monsters. Dune Beetle is a card that certainly shouldn't be taken early or anything like that, or even in the middle of a pack, but I think you should be considering it, around pick 8 or 9 or 10, instead of seeing it as the last pick in a pack, because it is a decent card. Even in a deck without any synergy at all, a 2-mana 1/4 is good stats, and it's a good blocker in this format. Number 7, I have Supernatural Stamina. This is, I think, the best combat trick in the format. I like it the most for a lot of reasons. The main one being that it makes sure your creature stays alive. The second one being that you can actually use it in response to removal as well, which is not true of like Brute Strength or Mighty Leap. Those are only going to save your creatures from damage removal that you're raising their toughness for enough. Supernatural Stamina doesn't care. It prevents them from dying from any removal that isn't exiling anyway. And it's also really fun to abuse with creatures with Enter the Battlefield abilities. I've done it on Grave Crawlers, not Grave Crawlers, but Grave Diggers. I've done it on Angler Drakes. I've done it on some stupid things where you get crazy value because you get the Enter the Battlefield trigger once again. It's another card that I see a little bit too late. I'm happy to start picking up Supernatural Stamina's pick 6 or 7 because it's such a strong combat trick. It isn't quite as good in a non-aggressive deck, but in a very aggressive deck, it is good, and it's a card that you should be happy to play, and it should be taken earlier than it already is. Next, we have Aven Initiate. This is another card that, as this list implies, I see around in packs later than I feel like it should be. A 4-mana 3/2 with flying is a decent deal. You add Embalm to it, and it gets a lot better. It has a good late-game cost that you can get a creature out of your graveyard in the late game. Despite the fact that aggro decks do exist in this format, you can build grindy decks in this format if you have the right removal around and the right blockers. And Aven Initiate's great in those decks. It can just help you win the game in the late game in the air on a regular basis. It's one of the best blue commons. I don't see it taken as if it's one of the best blue commons. And it's a card that I think should be taken. Pick 6 or 7, I start feeling pretty good about taking an Aven Initiate. Number 5, I have Doomed Dissenter. This guy I've seen really, really late. I've ended up in decks with 4 or 5 of them easily, and that shouldn't really be happening. Now, the Doomed Dissenter isn't good in just any black deck. It's kind of a D, I would say, in your average black deck, but if you have one of 2 synergies, it gets to be better. If you're a black-white zombie deck, it gets to be worth playing, and if you're a black-green -1/-1 counter deck, it's even better to play in that deck, because you can play a creature who puts -1/-1 counters on things like your Baleful Ammit on turn 3 and put the counter on your Doomed Dissenter, and basically you don't even have to suffer from the downside of putting a counter on it. You actually upgrade into a 2/2 zombie, and now you have a 4/3 lifelinker. And that's not that hard to do in those decks. There's lots of creatures. I mean, you know, less exciting is Orin Rikudu, but it works as well. You put a -1/-1 counter on Doomed Dissenter, get a zombie, and you have a 3/4. It's a really great card in those decks, and I shouldn't be able to end up with 4 or 5 of them because both of those decks should be interested in taking them. They shouldn't be around super late in packs. At number 4, I have Gale Strike. This card has some problems, admittedly. You know, it can only return tapped creatures, so it's not great for aggressive decks at getting attackers out of the way, but it is a card that's pretty good in the decks that try to make the game last longer. It's a good card against aggro, because you can bounce their 3 or 4 drop with it and draw a card, which, you know, gives you card advantage and some tempo over your opponent. Gale Strike is just a great card in those decks. It's great against Cartouche, people trying to use combat tricks. It's not as good with cartouches because the creature has to be tapped in the first place, but combat tricks galore in this format. We already talked about Supernatural Stamina. Gale Strike can sometimes actually net you a card when they try to use a combat trick, and that's just incredible when it does. And the fact that it draws you a card is very, very relevant. I think it's good in any blue deck, and I've seen them go still around in packs, 8th or 9th pick, and that really shouldn't happen. It should be in basically any blue deck in the format, and you should be happy to play it even. Number 3, I have Grasping Dunes. This is a card that I don't think is incredible, don't get me wrong, but I do think that if you are playing a 2-color deck and you're running 17 lands, it should always be in your deck, if you have one. If you're running a 2-color deck and you only have 16 lands, it gets to be a little shakier. And if you're running a 3-color deck, you should just not run it at all. But it actually has a lot of value, and I see them really late in packs all the time. Sometimes it's my last pick, and it's amazing to me because Grasping Dunes has so much value. It's a land, so in the early game it produces you mana. Then when you need it to, it can actually kill creatures. It can claim a card. So it's sort of like a mana rock that costs 0 mana, that eventually kills something, or at least weakens something, has a real effect on the board. And I play it all the time, because I end up with them all the time because no one else seems to want them. I play one all the time in my 17-land deck where I can run 8/8 and then the 1 Grasping Dunes. It's a very good land, and you should be happy to play it in your deck. You don't even need Sheffet Monitor, but if you do, it does get to be even better. At number 2, I have Soul Stinger. Now, this is a card that was contentious. In the video I did for the Ether Hub, I said that it was one of the best plat commons in the set. I still think that's true, but a lot of people disagreed with me. And I don't think people have still come around all the way on Soul Stinger, at least not everybody, but I love the card. I was talking about earlier about how aggro is something you have to be able to beat in this format. Soul Stinger helps you with that. If you play him as a 4-mana 2/3 and put 2 -1/-1 counters on him, you're going to get a 2-for-1 against most aggro decks. You block one of their guys and you put counters on the other to kill it. And that is a big deal against those aggro decks. They run out of gas eventually. They don't keep drawing cards. They just try to bum rush you. And Soul Stinger can put an end to that by killing 2 things at once. Of course, it also has the flexibility that all of these -1/-1 counter cards have, in that in the late game, if you want to, you can just kill one of your other creatures, maybe a Doomed Dissenter, to just have a huge body. And a huge body does a pretty good job of slowing down aggro decks as well. So Soul Stinger is a card that I see in the middle of packs that I think should be going a little earlier. I'm pretty happy to take him around pick 4 or 5 usually, and he's done a good job for me there. Finally, at number 1, I have Edifice of Authority. This, I don't understand, guys. This card, I drafted almost in every one of my drafts, at least lately, and in general, I guess. You've seen it in many of my draft videos. I take this all the time, and it's always good for me. It's another card that helps you beat aggro. It is a little slow. You do have to tap out on turn 3 and do nothing, but after that, you start shutting down your opponent's best creature every turn. Eventually, it helps you be aggressive, too, because it starts making it so your creature can't attack, their creature can't attack or block until your next turn. So it's actually a very good card. It's easy to get the brick counters on it. It is a little slow, like I said, but it's good against aggressive decks. It's good against all the decks. It slows down big win condition creatures. It stops a lot of things, And because of that, I think Edifice of Authority, I actually think Edifice of Authority is first pickable. I have first picked it before, but I've also picked it up pick 6, 7, 8, and I don't understand how or why that's happening, because Edifice of Authority is colorless, so any deck can play it, and it's effectively a removal spell. And there's not a lot of artifact hate in this format. I have had people cite in artifact hate against me after I won a game with it, and that's kind of sad, but Edifice of Authority is great. Also has some random synergy with Quarry Hauler. I've put more than one brick counter on Edifice of Authority with Quarry Haulers in my life, and that's a nice little additional value. So those are my 10 picks for the 10 cards that are the most underrated in Amonkhet drafts that people should be taking even earlier than they already are. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button. If you want to see more MTG Top 10s and more draft content in general, limited content in general, don't forget to subscribe. In the comments, let me know what you think are underrated cards, or let me know if you think I'm overrating any of these cards. It's always good to discuss these things. You know, no one is ever absolutely right about anything in Limited. It's always good to discuss things because we can see things from other perspectives. And finally, my content is sponsored in part by 5colorcombo.com, and they have just recently, a few weeks ago, come out with some really new and cool, sweet playmats that are called the Gods Edition, as you can see here. There's a bunch of cool creature tokens, a bunch of cool playmats. You can head over to 5colorcombo.com to their store and find these playmats and these tokens and a lot of other great things. You may have seen me do giveaways with some of them on my channel. And you can go ahead and use my discount code NITSAHONE5 there to get a 5% discount. Thanks for watching.